So one of my first deal that I bought from Subto was actually one of Kevin Cho's deal, and it was in San Antonio, Texas, and it was like a 2% interest, right? And as a newbie, you're like, holy moly, 2%, like that's unicorn nowadays, right? And so I started getting into that, and my first exit strategy was actually to be a part of the sober living facility. So that's how I connected, with like the mission that Mo and his wife is sharing, because I love to connect the passion behind real estate with the actual business side of things. And to me, PadSplit was like the perfect marriage. And nowadays with the high interest rates, it's hard to find anything that's cash flow. And so my way, especially in a tight market like Richmond, and I'm not an agent yet, so I have to buy sometimes on MLS, and I'm always looking for off market. So all those wholesaler hit me up. But that's kind of how I got started, right? And then long story short is the sober living organization that's supposed to buy our property fell through last minute. So we already under contract with this wholesaler and we can't really get out of it. And lo and behold, this was like last spring. And that was the time when I think like the Subto community and PACE was like really kind of like educating us a lot about like PadSplit. And actually my partners at the time, they were also a part of like the Subto community. They were the one that introduced me to PadSplit. They introduced me to Mendiza and all the, basically the tight-knit community as part of the PadSplit. So that whole house, we were able to cash flow a lot more, almost like triple what we originally anticipated with the sober living facility. And what we like about it is, we're all out of state, so none of us actually live in Texas. So we were just like, we hired a property manager to take care of the stuff for us. And we turned that, I think it was like a 2,000 square foot house, and we turned that into a 10-bedroom. So I think, throughout that whole experience, I learned what to do and what not to do. So I think in my case, I think looking back, a 10-bedroom house would be a little bit too big for a single family house. And because of it, we had a little bit of complaints, we had a little bit of things that we did not anticipate. The neighbors was like calling the cops sometimes at night time. And I would say, I think if you are thinking about starting PadSplit anywhere, I would definitely, my sweet spot, and you guys can share it accordingly, but like my sweet spot is like 6 to 7 bedroom. And then I think the ratio within the bathroom and the bedroom is between 2 to 1 or 3 to 1. Anything that's more than that is going to be causing a lot of like fights. And you don't want to get a phone call, especially if there is, like fights over silly stuff in the bathroom. And then the kitchen, so every time I look at a new house, the layout of the house matters a lot. Just because you have a lot of square footage doesn't mean it's going to work for PadSplit. The other thing too, I think that's really most important to me is the parking situation. So that house that we originally acquired has a lot of square footage of the house, but the parking is basically a driveway. And then we converted the garage actually into a living space, which is doable through PadSplit. But you have to be careful because then you're kind of taking away that space, from an actual parking spot. And sometimes they do fight over parking spots. So there are ways to mitigate that. If you are utilizing a single family house, one of them is using like an assigned parking. And then you can also upgrade them, like whoever needs a garage, you can charge them like an extra $50 a month. So that's like another way to get more additional income. Yeah.
One quick one. For people that are new here, can you explain to them what PadSplit
Yes,
is?
absolutely.
Before you go through a whole situation like that, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think I look at some familiar faces. I was like, okay, we all talk to PadSplit, right? So PadSplit is basically affordable housing for working professional. You have to be single, but it's basically converting each bedroom into its own unit. And that's why I think in the city of, in several county, it can get a little bit of gray because certain county consider that as multifamily zoning, and that's where you have to explain to them that, hey, PadSplit, technically you have a master lease with an entity, which in the face of legal, that should be treated as a person. But because it's so new, I would just really careful with certain county if you are planning to get into PadSplit so you don't get yourself into trouble. Because you can section off the bedroom, right? Or even like a living room, a dining room, all those extra square footage that you typically in a regular house, you can't really utilize. but in PadSplit, you can make that into a cash flowing asset. You can multiply your income into double, even triple. So for example, I have currently I own 2 fully booked PadSplit, and soon to be 3 is under renovation right now. But basically the 2 bedrooms, if I would have do like a long-term rental, I probably would get maybe 22 to 2,400, per month. Because we convert it into a PadSplit, we basically get about $6,000, $7,000 a month. If it's fully booked, obviously, minus expenses. So expenses wise, I would say, depending on when you actually join PadSplit, recently they had a structure change. When I first list the property, it's about 12% management fee, which is like their platform fee basically. But still, even if they cut it out, right, like I think our net income is probably about $2,000, $3,000 a month, which I think for a single family home, right, that's like, you can't really get that anywhere else. And the thing that I really like about it, because I actually came from a hospitality background, and so when I joined Subto, I actually prefer to be on Airbnb. I was like, I'm looking for Airbnb in Richmond, and that's kind of like my whole way to like transition from like travel, hospitality with like service and then real estate. But what I end up like not liking about Airbnb is the fact like how active it is, and actually it's like 1 to 2 days of like tenants. You have so many expenses, so many time. It's a time suck, basically. It sucks, yeah. You can. Yes, and I think with the regulation change, right? Like I think everywhere else is starting to brew. Like you have like even like what's happening in New York, what's happening in Texas. So I'm kind of like steering away from Airbnb at the moment. So I'm focusing on PadSplit. And the first property that I had in Richmond was actually like 2 minutes away from Chippenham Hospital. So my original idea was like, okay, this is gonna be a great MTR. I follow like Bigger Pockets. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna follow Jesse Vasquez too. And then I'm gonna like list it on Furnished Finder, trying to get all contracts. But as you know, like that takes years of relationship, right? And it takes more active time to meet and greet with certain people, making sure like you're actually understanding what they're needing, and for them to also trust you, because if you only have one property, they're probably going to look at you like, yeah, okay. Like, are you a business? Are you just like, a leisure investor, right? So they don't want to put their nurses in your house. So that's kind of where I get into, okay, let's talk about PadSplit. And so I got connected with Mendisa because of my San Antonio property, and then Andrew is my GM in Richmond. So they kind of help me kind of like go through the beginning process of PadSplit. So if you have any new property or any rental property that you're thinking about, having PadSplit to manage, I always go through them and just say, hey, I'm about to acquire this property. Is it good? Especially if you're brand new and you don't really know if it's gonna be a good PadSplit property. I would just shoot them a text, and they usually respond pretty quick. They will schedule like a Zoom meeting call with you, and then they would like run, like the county information just to make sure like, the county zoning to appropriate level, right? Like they actually would be able to support PadSplit in a safe way for your investment. So that's what I did, and that takes maybe like about 1 to 2 weeks. And then once you finish your renovation, I would say if you're converting like your living room, your dining room, whatever else, like I think for the first house that we did, it was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. And we converted that into a 6-bedroom, 2-bath because it's like a split level house, which is perfect for PadSplit because you have basically like an entryway, and then you have a kitchen area, and then we convert the living space into like a bedroom, and then it has like an upper and downstairs living room, and then that itself is converted another thing into like 2 additional rooms. So we have total 6-bedroom, 2-bath. It has a backyard. So the backyard is surprisingly what people actually loves, because you're competing against multifamily, right? You're competing against apartments. And so a lot of the times, like these tenants, when I ask them like what appeals to you the most about PadSplit, other than the fact it's flexible tenants, right, or lease, the other thing that really like is just having that like homey feely about like, having a backyard so they can like even do yoga on the grass, like simple stuff, that we always take for granted. So one of my nurses, actually, she's like an avid yoga lover, and she doesn't mind to pay extra to have like a bigger space, which allows her to do like yoga every morning. And that was her way to, I think that's why I also like right now I'm self-managing all my properties, because all this information is like, it's like golden nuggets, right? Because you don't really know what they're valuing unless if you start getting feedback from them. So that's kind of like my first property, and it took us about like 6 to 8 weeks to renovate, depending on how big. But I think the biggest thing I would say, if you spend your money on renovation, spend it where it matters. Of course, like it has to look clean and, kind of like somewhat updated, right? So they kind of like, okay, because get this, like PadSplit, most of these tenants are not going to be able to walk the property like a normal rental. So they would just have to look at photo, and then they will have to basically swipe right, basically. Right? So you have like 2 seconds to make that first impression and make them like book with you. And if I learned anything, like I think from Andrew, is the title of your listing matters a lot, and also like the description of all the facility that you're offering them, the amenities, so most of my houses have like extra things, right? I'm not saying like that's what you need to do, but you also need to think about who you're targeting after your demographic, depending on your price point and where the location is, right? So for me, for the one that's close to the hospital, I need to make the house serene. It has like a lot of greeneries, and the photo obviously appeals to that. But I also give them like a massage chair. You might think I'm crazy, like what do they need massage chair for? But believe it or not, some of these people, they're tired, they've been working all day, and they want to go home to a place that feels like a sanctuary to them. So that's what I did. I put like blackout lights, curtains. So there's a lot of similarities between like Airbnb, MTRs, midterm rentals. So there's a lot of similarities that I think work well with PadSplit. What's interesting is my second property, that was another Subto deal that somebody else kind of brought to me in last December, and that one is in the city of Richmond, so it's close to like the Brooklyn. That was the one in like what is it called? Starts with a B. What? Barton Heights. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we talked before this. I was like trying to compare notes. But yeah, Barton Heights. So what's interesting is the property in Richmond. Most of my tenants are younger. All my properties in Midlothian area, they're kind of like older people. And what's interesting is like once or two tenants so-called book the space. What's interesting is they're starting to attract the same type of clientele that's attracted to that house. So if they have like a younger tenant, all the house members seems to attract younger crowds. So that's an interesting nuance that I didn't think it's gonna matter to begin with. And what's interesting is like in certain neighborhood, it just attracts like a completely different demographic. You could have exactly the same furniture, the same checklist and everything, but you attract a different type of clientele. So I guess my advice to you is like if you are planning to do PadSplit, the location does matter, and depending whether you want to serve like students, whether you want to serve veterans, obviously, right? Like all these different pockets of society, I think they are attracted to certain things. So I think just catering the type of furniture that you want to invest in them, I would say that matters a lot. I usually purchase or budgeted about like $1,500 per room per se. So just for my own, like when you're doing like the renovation budget and all this, I would say that's usually what I end up spending. And then for the photography, if you can, so if this is your first PadSplit and you're a part of Subto community, they will pay for your photographer. And the photographer that is in Richmond, they're actually introduced by a friend of mine, and they're amazing. They're a pair, husband and wife, and they will make sure like the photo, they spend like hours on my house just to make sure they capture like, it's well lit, and then they would capture like during the evening. Yeah, but again, right, like we're in the business of like online marketing in a way. So like the first impression matters. And for the holding costs, right? Because like PadSplit, it's not like you list it and then like boom, like it happened, unless if you're going after contracts, right? But for the majority of us, like, you know, with PadSplit, we just don't have the time to do so. So we are relying on the platform to do all the marketing, all this management for us. They do all the background checks for all the tenants, which I love. I think just from that perspective alone, I think it saves me a lot of headache from having to go through eviction, which I'm going through right now, but that's a whole different ballgame. It's not fun, but it's stressful. I think I have so many gray hairs because of it. But yeah, so that's what I love about the platform, right? It kind of weeds out, and then they check like your income, making sure that you can actually afford it. And then what's nice about it too is, you know, going back to like that mission level or purpose-driven business, they also reported it out to like the credit report, the credit bureau. So like every time this tenant is making an on-time payment, they report it out to their credit report so that it builds their credit over time, which is nice. That's what I love about it. And you know, I think the community itself, like in each house, you can obviously be as hands off or as involved as you would like it to be. Me personally, I know I tend to be kind of like, you know, I try to welcome them with, I want to treat them as if like, you know, they're like my family. I mean, that's probably a little bit too drastic, but I want to make sure they know like they're not just a number in my house, and you know, this is a house that they can call home. So I think the first impression matters, because if you, for example, if I tend to realize if I can't be at the house or I couldn't meet them at the house and they had a problem with like moving in and moving out process, typically the rest of the experience is already tainted, because their first impression is like, this is so hard to get into the house, you know. So like I would say invest in a good electronic locks. It's worth the investment. I know it can be quite a bit, you know, especially if you have like 7 to 8 bedrooms, but it pays off in the end. And then, you know, I think certain brands, I think probably is just better. Like they have like a better battery life over time. And then what I end up starting doing, because I live like, you know, 45 minutes away, right? And 2 of these houses are like kind of like all over Richmond. What I end up having to do is like I start noticing like who's like the leader in my house, and I start kind of like leveraging them to be my house manager. And then in return, I end up like cutting them some costs on the rent side. And then that does 2 things, because they become loyal. Like they almost become like, I will never move out of this house, right? I will never move out. But what's interesting too, it actually saved me a lot of headache too, because sometimes you just like have somebody who needs like help with the closet, right? The closet like kind of like out of, you know, got out of a railing, simple stuff like that, that I think, you know, I don't need to call a handyman to fix. So that ended up like actually paying off at the end. And what I ended up starting doing also is like, you know, as I start renovating some of these houses in Richmond, I start leveraging their skill set to help me with like simple renovation stuff in order to give back to like, you know, like so they can, you know, basically teaching them more skill set that can, you know, probably produce them more income in the long run. And then, you know, it's a win-win, because they're eager to learn. And then if they know how to do things, then next time I need a handyman, guess who I'm gonna call? You know, room 6. So that's it. So that's probably what I would, you know, I think in a nutshell, that's what my experience so far with PadSplit. So I feel like I've been rambling a lot, but.
So if you have any questions, let me know. I can give you the mic so you guys can ask questions. Yes, pass it around.
I'm just going to clarify. Earlier, you mentioned a $1,500. I didn't understand if that was to furnish a room or the room rental rate.
Oh,
or
good question. Yes. So I would budget about $1,500 a room. That's probably on the higher side. I would say invest in a good mattress. You wouldn't believe, like, my first PadSplit in San Antonio, we invested in this like I think it was like a 6-inch mattress, and it was like costing us probably not that much to invest in a better one. And I kid you not, we end up having to purchase, what is it called, like the mattress top? Yes, and in the end, we can't really get the same experience with that, and we end up like having to scrap it and just start over and reinvest it. So I would say, 1,500 is roughly within the bed frame. I invest in a good mattress, good blackout curtains. Even in some of the room, right, you need a flat screen TV. Well, it doesn't have to be flat, but nowadays everything is flat, right? So smart TV, so you don't have to pay for cable, so you can just have them stream it from Netflix. That saves you money as well. I invest in a really, really fast, or the highest internet speed ever, because it's not that much. I think it's like $40 more a month for the whole house, but they're happy, and a happy tenant, happy landlord. So what else do I spend it on? Mini fridges. So I don't really invest in mini fridge for the level that has the same as the kitchen, but I end up getting mini fridges for all the rooms that's kind of within distance originally from the kitchen. And after I test it out, it's so worth it, because it's $200 per room, but nobody's gonna fight over who ate my spaghetti, right? Who ate my yogurt, and it's again, it's so worth the investment. And what else do I invest in? A desk, yes, yeah, you've been there. Yeah, Asif has been there. The desk. So I started. My first house, I actually learned this the hard way, because my first desk, my first house did not have a desk, and that was interesting, because I was like, who needs a desk? They have a nightstand, and but most of them actually do work from home. Again, it depends on your target demographic, but most of them do need a desk. So the second house that I invest in, I actually purchased a Veridesk, not that specific brand, but house that the what is it called, adjustable height, yeah, a stand-up desk, because again, I'm trying to infuse with good healthy wellness, because the more they feel, the more they the better they feel about themselves, right? The more they are liking to stay there. And to me, this is not just about housing. To me, it's about having giving them the tools and kit to be more successful and happy with whatever their next chapter is in their life. So that's what I end up using. And then obviously the massage chair, that you don't have to go through that. But I think just having a good desk and chairs, that's really important. I also invest in a good mattress pad, because you don't want to go through expensive mattress. Somehow the pillows and the mattress pad are the one that always got stolen the most. Or maybe they just when they check out, it's okay, this is mine. Plus I wouldn't probably reuse those, so I would just invest in a good pillow. I usually provide 2 pillows per room, a good mattress pad that's waterproof. But pretty much it. And then I usually put when they move in, I usually give them a little welcome kit, just so that they know where everything is. Again, I don't really always do that, just because of my time limitation, but I kind of test it in pockets, and the ones that I provide them even as simple as a gift candles, and they would send me photos and say, look at what I did. They're proud of their room, right? So that's what I'm trying to generate, is just to kind of make them feel like home. Now going back to the $1,500 question, so I would say $1,500 probably what I would budget for furnishing, but I think also when you're budgeting for the renovation part, it depends on different houses, right? But I think in general, if you add the walls to an existing structure, I think we pay about maybe I would say between $3,000 to $5,000, depending on do you add one wall and how much you need to do. So I would just try to do that. And then if you need extra space, what had worked well for me in the past is the water heater. Believe it or not, it's the wasted space in the house, unless if you have a huge house. But how we converted that 3-bedroom 2-bath into a 6-bedroom 2-bath, we actually had to move the utility space, turn the closet for the water heater into a clothing closet. Yeah, we're being creative, and then we turned that into a tankless water heater, so that we don't really have to worry about who used my hot water, right? People will fight over stuff like that. So I think certain investment, it may not always be the traditional way to invest as a, like a real estate investor, but I think it's totally worth it if this is like the type of investment that you want to do long term. Does that answer your question? Yeah, okay, perfect.
Pets or no pets?
No, definitely not. You say pets, right? Yeah, no, definitely no. You can't have pets in. I'm pretty sure you can't have
I
pets.
just Googled it because
Yeah.
I was gonna ask that question.
Yeah.
I think this is like not the smartest question.
Yeah.
I'm glad that it was.
Yeah.
But it's not allowed unless it's service.
Unless if it's a service animal, correct?
Then I
Yeah.
have a question.
Okay.
So let's just do the mic first, because people can't hear your question.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So whoever's the mic has a question.
Oh,
All right.
okay.
Hi, I'm Ryan. I have one question. So we have a property in Churchill off 19th. It's a duplex that we've walled off both of the living rooms to turn into 2 extra bedrooms.
Okay.
We're looking to PadSplit that. I know through Richmond it's totally fine. We have another property in Petersburg. It's a historic home, and we looked into PadSplitting that, and we've run into that the historic board will
Right.
not allow that. Have you ran into something like that? Can you share your experience on that?
I actually almost bought one in a historic district, and I did call somebody from Petersburg. I think his name is like started with a G. I forget, but he's basically the Petersburg like zoning guy. And I remember he said, you have to meet not only from the exterior but also from the inside. So I would be very careful investing in like a historic district just because there are so many restrictions. Because PadSplit just even if you're not like investing in a historic district, you already have a lot of like eyes on it that sometimes kind of like in the gray area at the moment just because it's so new. So adding another layer on top of that, unless if there is like something spectacular about this house, I would probably stay away from it. Yeah, it's just not worth hiring a lawyer. Yeah, speaking from experience, yeah. Okay, all right.
Yes, so my question was, it says that only service animals are allowed, but what about, like now there's emotional support animals, so that's allowed as well, okay.
Their paperwork has to be approved.
Make sure.
Yeah.
And then there's still animals, I mean, love animals, but there's still animals. What if someone, it gets allergic or has some kind of like, do you have to disclose that there's an animal there?
I have not
it
run
could be
into
like-
this before. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm creating problems.
No. It's a good question, right? It's a good question. Yes. Because if it's not pets, it's something else, right? Like I think
Right.
we had somebody with like peanut allergies and stuff like that. So I think we just have to
Exactly.
be really careful. And usually what I would suggest is the host. That's why I also want to manage my house, like so everybody knows, like if they have any issues, right, with anything, they can always reach out to me. I think that's the number one thing because as long as they have the trust with you. So I give you an example, right? Peanut allergies, fighting over the temperature of the house is the number one, like probably the 2 top reasons why people fight over things. So you kind of have to assume like the role of the leader of the house to avoid that kind of stuff. And then at the end of the day, I think these people just want to be heard and seen, right? So as long as they know like you're taking action, and then I think the house members, I think for the most part, they're not gonna be like, oh no, like this is my space. So they're usually pretty good about it, and they also wanna have like a, kind of like a friendly home, right? So they don't want to be like going to the kitchen and you're like avoiding them, because that's another reason why people would leave a house. And that's also the number one reason why people stay. I have a tenant who she actually filed like what is it called, like when you try to move out notice, like literally the day after I asked her, I was like, hey, I'm sorry to see you go, like, is there anything that we can do, just to kind of like understand a little bit why she wants to leave. And at the time, she actually had the smallest room in the house. She was the one that had the utility closet, but she loves her location of the house. So I asked her, like, is there anything that I can do to help this? And so she basically just communicated to me kind of like what was in her mind. And because she felt like every time like if they had any issues, or even like if a member, for example, kind of like rubbed her the wrong way, she felt like, she can talk to me about it. Because of that, she actually ended up staying. Now, I'm not saying like that's obviously not always the case, but I think the relationship that you build with your tenants ultimately, is gonna matter. Yeah. So. Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about how you manage neighbors? So I'm assuming your houses are in different neighborhoods. How do you manage neighbors and the
Yeah.
number of people coming and going?
So that's a great question. So I would say don't buy property, or try not to buy a property that's like in a very, very nice neighborhood, you know, like the one that's like have a lot of people staying at home, you know, it's like, what's Susie doing today? You know, like try not to like when it's too nice, you know, it's probably not the right neighborhood because they don't like renters, right? That's number one. And then on top of that, you're trying to introduce like 6, 7 people, strangers, and potentially they can leave in and out. So I would say that's probably the biggest like rule of thumb that I can think of. The second thing is when I buy a property, I always scope out the neighbor as much as I can. I try, you know, and this is before you even get into like contract. I usually just try to say, hey, who's like sitting over here? And I try to do it like in different times of the day, especially if, you know, at nighttime, just to make sure like it's a safe neighborhood. I think access to public transportation is another key thing that people really like, but not always, because like the first house that I have in Richmond is nowhere near bus transportation, and the neighborhood was kind of like, I would say, I don't even know, I don't like to put them in buckets, but I think it's mixed, right? It's in Bon Air, so some are really nice and some are like not super nice, and thankfully our neighbors was nice because they actually were the one that had when we were like trying to furnish the house and everything, like, and then it got shipped to the wrong people. They were actually the one that actually kind of like, you know, ship everything back to me. And so like, you know, the neighborhood, I think does matter a lot. Now to avoid, you know, kind of like pissing off your neighbors, so to speak, like I think trash services, I would get like at least 2 bins, you know, depending on how big your thing, but just making sure like it got kept clean. I have like a 2 bi-monthly, what is it called, like mowing services, so that, you know, the grass is always cut. And then at the end of the day, like I always like introduce myself if I can, right? Like, and just say, hey, you know, I'm so-and-so, like, you know, if you have any concern about my tenants, you know, you have my number, you can always, you know, give me a call. So I think that goes a long way, especially even the one in Richmond, because I think that one, most of the neighbors, they're not renters, and so I end up actually stumble upon one of them, which is like right next door, and so I had to explain to her like, hey, you know, they're gonna be like tenants here, and if you have any you know, like concern with any of them, please do let me know. But I kind of like, you know, try to keep the house basically spick and span, at least from the outside, as much as possible, and that goes a long way. So probably, and then the parking is another thing, right? Don't like park in your neighbor's space. So I always try to tell my tenants, and this is like a part of their move-in instructions, you know, if you need a garage, you know, we have 1 extra space or whatnot, but try to, you know, and they usually always ask me like, where can I park my car if they do have a car? So, yeah. I see if you know everything, man.
Are you right? Just talking, right? I forgot.
You already
Hey,
know
Felicia.
everything.
So, you want to talk about like occupancy? You want to talk about occupancy? Like, how's it working out?
Yeah, so the occupancy, yeah, so both, I have 2 PadSplit in Richmond right now. All of them are fully booked. What I was gonna say too, I think with the holding cost, right? So if you want to invest in PadSplit, I would say try to bake about 3 to 4 months of holding costs. Again, you know, I would say, I think the thing that works the best for me is you don't wanna be the lowest of the group, right? Because like if you're lowest, then you tend to somehow like maybe could attract like people who may not care as much about destroying your property, believe it or not. And then I always put like approval on, just so that they feel like, okay, like you're not automatically gonna be like auto book. We try to do the first time, like with the one in Texas with auto book, we end up getting so many like non-serious tenants, because sometimes they would be like, okay, I'm about to get a job in, you know, San Antonio, and then they change their mind like 24 hours later, right? Because then if it's like auto book, they just feel like the cost to entry is very low. So to them, it's like, it doesn't matter. The other thing that I try to balance is like the move-in fee. So like in PadSplit, you do have a move-in fee. It's similar to like security deposit in like long-term rental. So initially I had it set for like 149, I think, which is basically 150. But, you know, and that would cover, you know, like missing pillows, like anything that the tenant can take, right? So that kind of like, that's what that move-in fees is supposed to cover. And also your cleaning fees to make sure, like, you know, when they have a turnover, you can have enough money to pay for a cleaning fee. So I would say, I think 149 sometimes can be a little high depending on your location. But, you know, I think 149 to 99, I think that's like my sweet spot. I think 99 usually is what PadSplit or Andrew sometimes suggests is just kind of like the perfect mix, because it's not too high for them and it gives them just enough incentive to like book your property versus like 149, you know, because that can be like, that can go into their rent instead of like your move-in fee. So I would say, I think for holding costs is within like 3 to 4 months. And what's interesting is like both of my property, the highest rent rooms were the one that actually went first, which is like, to me, I did not expect that at all, because I thought like, okay, they're gonna try to, you know, probably like the cheaper room goes first. But what I realized is like, again, going back to amenities, what they value, and this is probably like, you kind of have to look at them like, okay, what can this property give them that maybe like, you know, like a boarding room, or, you know, like maybe like an apartment cannot give them. So I think a lot of the rooms that actually went first is like rooms that are on the first floor. I think that goes a long way, especially with like elderly, you know, tenants. And then also like rooms that actually are bigger, that goes fast. And so I think you can definitely charge more for it. And then as far as like, you know, how it's producing, right? So I would say, I think originally, all my rooms goes for between like 220, I would say, and you can run promotions too, by the way. So like if you list for 250 and then you're like, okay, it's been like 2 months and nobody tried to rent it. So you can like run promotions on it, which is, I think, goes a long way. But it ranges from like 250 to like 350, so I would say. So it really depends. I think so I guess that goes back to like the point where you don't have to like crowd them into like a 10-bedroom house, right? Because at the end of the day, sometimes you can give them more amenities and more space for higher rent, which for you as the landlord, that actually can be a win-win, because then, you know, you don't have as many tenants to manage as well.
Sure.
Is that a week?
Oh yeah, yes, a week, yes. Yeah, because we pay utilities. Yes, a week. That's right. Yeah, I'm sorry. Oh yes,
Yeah.
sorry.
Two questions. So one of them, you had mentioned the that you get smart TV and high-speed internet, and you had mentioned like you use streaming services instead of cable. Are you also footing the bill for the streaming services, so like Netflix, Hulu?
Oh no. It's their own account, right? Yes.
Their own stuff.
Yes.
Okay. And then, well, it's kind of another question behind that. The desk, are you buying a chair with the desk as well for them?
Yes.
When you do, okay.
Yeah, and that goes with like the 1,000 to 1,500. That's probably, you know, kind of what I would budget. Obviously, you can spend less if you want to, but that's usually what I try to budget. And then if you spend less, that's like a bonus. Then you can use that for your marketing dollar if you need
Gotcha.
to.
And then the last one, so you said that the two biggest issues that you run into are peanut allergies and temperature.
Yes.
So what do you do to control those particular issues? Do you how do you handle those two specific ones?
Yes. Oh, and I forget, the last one was hot water.
Hot water.
So
how do you handle all three of those?
Yes.
Like when people come
Basically, it's like things, you know, like it's like based on limited sourcing, like anything that you can think of that they might fight about. Like that's why I like to invest in like 1 gigabyte like internet, for example, because then it relieved me from like knowing it's like, are they gonna slow down any time soon? And then including like FiOS, you know, like just stuff like that. But to mitigate stuff like that, like for me, what has worked the best is just kind of maintaining that kind of like open communication with them. So like, for example, like my tenant had a issue recently, like just a few days ago, and she texted me on PadSplit platform, because you have to like request chat with the host. So I accepted it, and I was like, okay, is everything okay? And this is like 5 o'clock, and she never said anything. Like, so I know like when she said something, it's like usually, uh-oh, like what's the problem, right? And so so she apparently had she tend to get cold very easily, and the rest of them like tend to not be cold. But there is this one tenant that just moved into the house, and that's the only missing link that I could think of, right? So what I did was I set up a meeting with this tenant who's having a problem. I make sure that I take her, I listen to what her complaint is, because sometimes what they complain about is not actually always what the true root cause is, right? And then sometimes they think like, oh, well, so and so did it. It's like, well, how do you know if, so you kind of have to act like almost like a
parent.
Parent, yes, it comes handy. So you kind of have to act like you can't be partial, even though like, sometimes the house has like somebody that they don't like, and then they can rate members too, which is interesting. So somebody with like a fair, like not so great like rating, sometimes what I end up seeing is like they end up getting like, kind of like the scapegoat for everything. So I have to be really careful to be impartial when somebody like complain, right, about something. And that actually goes a long way, because then if they have a problem, then I do a survey for all the house member, and I say, okay, like what is your perfect temperature, and then you can submit your survey by tomorrow morning. And if you don't vote, then that means like the majority of the house win. So it's like so it's like Big Brother in a way. And then
So like with the temperature, can you like put that in the PadSplit, like I guess like document that said like the house temperature will always be 70 unless agreed? You can do that.
So I end up actually having to do that. So I send the house a message. So technically I don't include that, because like, what if 2 of them move out, right? And then you get outnumbered by the new people. So I try to be really careful. So I think the majority of the, every time you have a complaint, I think what they're expecting you to do is like, number 1, always listen to what they have to say. Number 2, like take very timely action, so they feel like, okay, you're not just like, taking 3 days to respond to my need here, because she's like sweating bullets and then nobody take action. So I think that's really important, timely thing, which is kind of interesting. And that's one of the reasons why sometimes like having a property manager may not work, because they're managing a lot of property. So depending on who it is, just be really careful and make sure like they have that service mentality, and making sure like they feel heard. And then 3 is like, I think if it's something about like temperature control, just make sure everybody feels like they're being heard. So you're not just saying, okay, I'm just listening to Asif and, basically like screw everybody else. Like, so you have to basically make sure like everybody feels like they have an equal say into like what the temperature of the house should be.
Your electric blanket.
That's what she ended up actually using. So, but yeah, electric blanket works in the winter, and now they have a different problem in the summertime. So she's like, well, we agree on like 70 to 72, but then, like when I came back from work, it was like 80 degrees. So like, what's going on here? So, but it was a non-issue, because like all I had to do is reestablish that. So there on PadSplit, there's like a house message. So you can send a house a message and say, hey guys, just FYI, like, if you need to change anything, we agree on 70 to 70, just something along that line. And then I never heard anything back. Like, so, that was it.
How often do you find yourself playing this like mediator role?
Not often. Well, it depends on what's a lot and what's not a lot. I think every time you introduce a new tenant, that's usually one. And new tenants and new season, right? Now we're dealing with the summertime, so it was fine in the winter, and then now it's like becoming AC. So it depends, and that's kind of where, I think you can be as hands-off or as hands-on as you want. I'm just still in the learning phase, and to me, I want to make sure like they feel heard, and I also want to know like what's the pain point, so the next house that I'm renovating, right, I can invest a little bit more on certain things like faucets, like plumbing. Just like the non-sexy stuff like actually goes better. It goes a long way. because those are the things that I get called the most. It's just like, oh, the shower is not working, or like, it's leaking, just stuff like that. It's just worth to do it right from the beginning.
So going back to the leases through PadSplit, are there set amounts of dates or times? Or like, is it a month by month? Can you go more or less? How does that work?
Yeah, great question. So most PadSplit have a 30 days lease minimum, and then from that it's week to week. So that's like one of the thing that most of my tenants love about PadSplit is because sometimes they don't really know how long they need to be in a house. So I have 2 tenants actually in the past that they were just waiting on a house that they're buying, and they don't have a place to stay, so they're just like, but they're honest about it, and they're just gonna be there for 6 weeks until the house is done, and then they like the fact that they don't have to change, or do like their own electricity. They don't have to change their mailing address. So those things like goes a long way. So it's 30 days, and then it's like month to month. My average tenants, I would say, most of them have been there. I think I only have like 2 move out since the introduction of the house. So again, like everybody has a different reason why they stay. Usually they relocate if it's like jobs related, or if it's like they're getting a house somewhere else, they're waiting on like a specific event, then I think they would move out. Some of them actually are just, I get a feeling they might be there for a while, because you can tell based on the stuff that they bring in and how much stuff they have. Some of them is like moving houses, like literally. So, yeah.
And then security deposit. Can you break that down more? Do you get to pick that? Does PadSplit picks that?
Yeah, so security deposit is basically the move-in fees, right? So we can set it up as a host. You can even charge $0 if you just want to get it booked. But that's the stuff that I don't recommend, because we did that with the Texas property, and we just got like everywhere and anyone. So I think my sweet spot is like $99, and maybe if you have a nicer room, I would say maybe you do like $149 or something like that. And they know what it is, and they can actually split that into installment as well. So it's not like out of pocket, like from the beginning.
And that's a fee, right? That's not a deposit.
It is a fee, yeah. So you get to keep it regardless. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I got a question.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So how much do you operate this business on surveys? Do you do a lot of surveys with the tenants to get a lot of knowledge?
No, that was actually my only surveys about the AC.
Oh, okay.
I would say AC is the only thing that I think is like, unless if you have a mini split. But again, like if you're I actually had an issue with one of my AC recently, so I had to decide, do I want to invest in a new HVAC or do I want to invest in a mini split? And that was the one. It's a tough call, because I think from a house appreciation and reselling, if I had to resell this in the future, I think it would make sense to do like a new HVAC. That way it's better. But it's funny because I was like meeting with this HVAC guy in the front porch, and then my tenants came. It's like, we would prefer mini split. It's like, so I mean, it would have been a lot cheaper for me to do that. But it's again, like it's ultimately your call. But I would say that's probably the only thing. Can you guys think of anything like?
But they'll run up your electric bill.
Yeah, right. They do. Yeah. Yeah.
I got
yes.
a couple questions here.
Okay.
Temperature. How do you address the issue? You said the temperature was getting up to 80 degrees.
Yes.
Virginia has a state law on renters. You're required to cool the house, any occupied part of the house, to no higher than 78 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
And they have another and that's from May 15th to October.
Okay.
From October to May, you're required to heat the rooms to a certain temperature.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you get around that?
So for my particular scenario, there was somebody that turned it off. So that was somebody turned it off, and yeah, that was the last person that moved into the house. Yes, and hence we conducted the survey, because again, like I had to be super careful not to like alienate anybody from the process. Although it's like, what are you doing, right? Like, but I have to be nice about it, and I think that's why the survey works, because then they make they feel like, okay, I have a say in this. So after that, we just kind of like, once the survey is conducted, then I just reestablish that again, reinforce that with the house message and say, hey, this is just a friendly reminder. And I would put like, do not touch, like, like 70 to 72 degrees. Huh? Yeah, there you go. Or like a zapper every time you touch this. No, but I mean, I think they get it. I mean, I think most people just do this because they're probably not used to being in a communal community. And my house that actually had this problem, actually most of them are over 55, I would say. So I don't think, I know like he probably never, like probably he's not used to having a roommate. So it is an adjustment, but I never heard a peep ever since then. So
but when I'm assuming these people are coming in and they're locking the door, they're closing the doors and locking the doors. So that would cause a problem with the air conditioning and the heat circulating through the house unless you've installed vents through the doors to get the air out of the rooms. You know what I mean? So have you done something like that?
Yeah, so I think the house, like for, go ahead, Mo.
No, I think the simple fix for
Yeah.
most of us that have done this, because it's happened a lot before, is to shave the bottom of the door a little bit more, so there's a larger gap.
Yeah.
And most of our houses don't have carpet, they'll
Yep.
have more of the vinyl, or LVT, so there's a lot more circulation, and so that way the airflow still works. And then certain thermostats, like the home, Ecobee is not so, Honeywell, the Honeywell T10s, allow for circulation mode, and there's a few other thermostat, so it keeps the circulation going and it keeps the cost lower. Otherwise, to monitor and flow the airflow in each room.
Right. So have you put any of the lockdown thermostats, like they sell thermostats that you can buy where they can't raise the temperature above, lower than 75, say for cooling, and they can't raise it no higher than 72. Have you put any of those in?
I have not, and I do it for a different reason, but cost is number one, right? But number two is also like what's interesting, I think, about the human elements of this is they want to feel like they're being heard and have a say. So it's almost like if you kind of like lock it up, sometimes like they feel like, okay, I actually have somebody give me that feedback in the past where the house had it, and then they also had a camera in the house and they moved out because they don't like feeling like, okay, it should be my right that I have a say in this, although I get what you're saying, right? Because like there are certain things that you can't like break. But I think for temperature, at least not yet, like I haven't need to take into that level of extreme, I guess, to take.
Okay. Now, the other issue I have is insurance.
Okay.
Are you requiring each tenant to have renter's insurance?
I don't know if PadSplit does, right? Yeah. They covered it, yeah, because that's a part of their,
They get them to do it.
Right, that's what I thought. Yeah, the lease agreement, I think, say like they have to get a rental.
Plus liability coverage?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, you said you had two units here in Richmond, right?
2 houses, yeah.
Okay, so I'm in Texas. So I'm assuming the zoning code is different from here to Texas. But how do you get around the zoning laws here in Virginia?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. Yeah, so technically, and again, the platform is new. Right? So technically, the way PadSplit basically educate the zoning law enforcement, the code enforcement guy. Basically, you're leasing to an entity, which in the state it's looked at as a person. So you're leasing to one. They have it's like a private members, right? And then they have the rights to lease to their members. So technically that does not meet the definition of multifamily. Now, how you look at it, that's obviously the gray area that you just have to be careful about.
Right, but they have a code in Virginia now. No more than four non-related people can occupy a rental property. And the city of Richmond, Henrico, and Hanover already started shutting some of these down.
Yeah. No, I know. Yeah, I know. My property is one of them too. So.
Oh, they shut it down?
Yeah. Not shutting it down. No. Not shutting it down. But yeah, so they did call it out. So like what I'm saying is like what you're saying is definitely a valid point, and that was like one of the reasons why I actually did have to involve like Andrew, and then we had to involve, like the legal PadSplit, because what they're doing, if you do get a citation, you do have to involve a zoning attorney. But in the end, what PadSplit is trying to do right now is they're trying to lobby, right, from the board side to influence that, some of the definition in each county ordinance to make sure they don't, they found a so-called like it's not a loophole. Yeah. I hate to say it, but like, something that can be used to justify that this is not a multifamily.
It's not multifamily. It's technically a boarding house. It has to be rezoned to a boarding house, and that's where the problem's going to come.
So I have said that with like the Chesterfield County, so they can actually have a special permission. So that's what my attorney is actually working on right now, is to actually try to have a special permit to run it as a group home or whatever you call it, and then up to whatever limit. Like in our case, it was like 6 tenants, right? So that's like what actually is being worked on at the moment. Now, what that process looks like may look different for different county, but what we have to do is until the case is resolved, we have to go to a court every so often, right, to give status update, and then the county also has to be able to inspect your house to make sure it meets code. So as long as you give them, access to the house and make sure it's meeting code, then, basically that should be, that's allowed until they can make that special permission.
That was in Chesterfield? Mm-hmm. Okay, yes. Well, yeah, the Chesterfield zoning people came, talked to me last fall, like Airbnbs. There's no legal Airbnbs in Chesterfield. Mm-hmm. And they've been outlawed in Richmond. There's only 32 legal Airbnbs in Richmond.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. No. That's so that's again, right? Like I think that's why I'm staying away from Airbnb. But also I think the zoning is also very, it's a tough balance between like, knowing. First of all, I think if you get cited, I would say, try to limit like the information that you give them, first of all, because I'm not a lawyer, number one, because anything that you say to them might be interpreted differently. And I think certain county like Chesterfield, and God knows which other ones, I feel like sometimes they're kind of like in this, like witch hunt to like prove like, okay, this is like multifamily, the way you use each room is like by unit, it meets, like what everything that you said. And I actually met like with different attorney across Richmond that actually does zoning, and most of them, when we got cited, they don't even want to take our case because the PadSplit platform is so new. But again, like Richmond is also like in the main market area, so like in case if you ever get cited, they will help you with the attorney fee up to like a certain amount. And then what they are doing right now in Richmond specifically is they're trying to lobby from the other side to help kind of establish the fair housing, because fair housing is like on the federal side, so like they can't really trump, and there's certain protected classes that I think Mo and is working on. So there's ways that you can go around it, and in the middle of it, they can't shut down your PadSplit as well. So my exit strategy is like I'm gonna operate business as usual, right? And then we have a plan in place where we're gonna seek for special permission, and then if that's not approved, then hopefully in a year, because that takes forever to like that process is not like quick. So the goal is, while we're doing that, PadSplit Legal is also going to help lobby from the legal side, from the ordinance perspective, to help influence like, what's allowable. And then hopefully in 9 to 12 months, if we come into an agreement, great. If not, they're going to also like try to rebuttal the fact like, this is for fair housing. And to your point about Airbnb, that's what they told our lawyer, is they don't want Airbnbs, they want hotel, they want commercial hotels to invest. So, but that's against what they were saying about affordable housing. So like they're kind of like backtracking on their own thing. So, I'm not here to like, bash like the county, but in the end, there's several points that the attorneys are drafting up right now, because just because you're on blast for something, it doesn't mean like they even know like some of the laws that we establish federally, they can't trump that. So if we have to go that route, then we will. But I think the fair housing and that's a big one. Affordable housing.
So what are they finding you? When they cited you, what are they finding you?
Yeah, so they cited me. So first of all, when they called, they were like, okay, well, you have to be 4 and under. At the time, we only have 2 tenants in the house, so they don't even have like a base to stand on at the time. So I thought, okay, bye bye, see you later. And then 30 minutes later, he called me back and said, okay, well, technically, what type of lease do you have? And then they start digging more and more and more into this, and this goes with the less you speak, probably the better, and just hire an attorney at the time. So I think that's like my biggest lesson learned, and also show action, because initially in the beginning we were told don't try to do anything to promote more traction or something, and sometimes it does work, but I think in our case, I think just to show hey, I'm making an effort to meet you halfway. I think that would have saved us a lot of problems. So that's pretty much it. And then, so I'm cited for zoning, conducting a basically they cited me for multifamily in a single family residence. And that's because they don't understand the definition of family in the state of Virginia. And that's what PadSplit is trying to lobby at the moment, because the definition of family in the Chesterfield ordinance is very gray. Even the attorney doesn't know so what is the definition of a family, right? Is it what if is it by blood, is it by stranger? What if I invited my friend to stay over? What if I'm house hacking? Does it matter? So I think that's what they're trying to lobby to have clarification over that. On top of that, if it's truly a family as a person, then that's what Charles from PadSplit, he's the head of legal. The way he explained it to us is our lease is with PadSplit LLC. It's an entity, it's one person. So technically we're not leasing this with the members. It's almost like a private member, how you're, if you have a church and you want to rent it to your church people, who am I to say you can't? So we're trying multiple ways to kind of attack it and to basically hire an attorney to present that to the county. And in order to do that, we have to show up every month right now. We're trying to reel back on it. But that's what we're doing. And PadSplit seems to be very confident in winning the case. I know they have won many cases in the past. So, we'll see. But yeah. Angie, birthday girl.
So I have a couple of questions. So this goes along with what you just said about it's a family. Are you allowing children? How many people can have in one room? And the second question, just so I don't have to, is how do you know how much to charge as opposed to an apartment?
Yeah. So. Great question. So you have to be single, no guests. You can't bring a guest. So you have to be single, and you cannot have family members. I think one of the girls tried to bring her daughter in, but she asked me in advance, and she was the one that's moving houses, right? So in certain cases, I as long as within 9 to 5, for example, I usually it's fine, but they cannot stay in the house overnight. They have to be single. They have to have they do all these not eviction. They have to do all this background checks process in advance, and that's what actually when I asked the members why do you pick PadSplit over an apartment, right? And the funny thing is they say, okay, we like the fact that PadSplit already do all these background checks, so we know to a certain degree who's walking down the hallway for me. So they really like that safety aspect of it versus if you would have done room rentals just on your own, they don't really trust that you would do your due diligence, systematically, and they hold, all tenants to a certain level. And it also makes my life also a lot easier, bless you. Because if they break the law, guess what I'm gonna do? Well, PadSplit does not allow A, B, and C instead of I'm the villain, So it kind of helps in a certain situation. And then what was your second question? Oh, yeah. So I had the same question when I listed my room per room. so you can actually ask your GM, whoever your GM is going to be, to run like an analysis on the room based on like enrichment. But what's funny is like when I did mine, that was like back in November of last year. The Richmond average, the Richmond average at the time was like 186 to like 199. So like at the time, you know, I was trying to convert that into a midterm rental. So I was telling Andrew, like, I don't know, because that's a lot of differences between what I could get from a midterm rental versus PadSplit. And so he's like, why don't you just try it out? You know, try it out, like, see what sticks. And so what I did was we listed out for what we want, and then we monitor. We just, you know, it's like stock market. You just like kind of like, okay, how is it performing? And then the nice thing about it is you can adjust the price. If it's too high, like we adjust our price like several times. So now I kind of know like what's the sweet spot is for certain type of room, certain location. There are so many things that you know, that influence the price. And at the end of the day, I think it just matters like what your tenants value, right? Like sometimes like, you know, the location matters. What else? Like the amenities also matters. But at the end of the day, I think that's like what most of them probably like between like 250. Private bathroom, yeah, that's a big one. Yep. How big the closets, believe it or not, like, you know, like sometimes the one that got rented the most is the one with the biggest closets. So, yeah. Did you say something? Anybody? Oh,
yeah, so my question actually was, how do you guys screen the tenants? But I guess you said that PadSplit takes care of doing that because of the safety.
Yeah, PadSplit do all that. So by the time, basically all I did was like list the house, right? And then once you sign the lease, the house usually goes on the so-called on their website within like 24 hours if everything goes well. And then you just basically get a notification or your text message and say, you got a new booking request. That's it. And then you have like 24 hours, I believe, right, to approve it. And then you just go to their dashboard. You can use it from your phone. It's super simple. You can like even see their photo, like what they like. Are they tidy? Are they a night person? So you can like actually scroll through. And then what's nice about it is they also, if they've been in PadSplit before, so if they are moving from another PadSplit, you actually can see like the host notes on it. So you can tell like, okay, like, I don't know, like a lot of people like complains about the AC, what's going on here, right? Like it just kind of promote conversation. But I would say as a host, I would be very careful in like judging them just based off that, because my best tenant actually had like a fair assessment from the previous house, and she was so-called like the scapegoat of, you know, everybody else. And so I just end up like, you can call her, or you can call the future tenants if you have any specific question and just say, hey, you know, do you have a few minutes? And actually that kind of go a long way, because if you take the comments or the feedback with a grain of salt, it helps establish that relationship too before they even move in. So.
So, are you filling those spots just with PadSplit, or are you doing any other marketing on your own?
Oh no, I'm just filling that up with PadSplit, because to be honest, like I think that's like my biggest. Like I like that part about PadSplit, honestly. Like, you know, I'm like first a real estate investor. I don't really have time to market it. And honestly, San Antonio, my first house, I did not know about this, but apparently it wasn't like a main market. So we had to do our own marketing. Of course, the GM will help you to a degree, but like I think it's just so much nicer if, you know, if you do, if they do most of that like front end workload on your behalf.
So the reason why I asked,
Yeah.
we were in another meetup that PadSplit had done in Richmond a couple of weeks ago, and because the stats, I'm a stats number kind of guy, so what stuck to me is they literally have a demand for, works out to 125 houses they need in Richmond area. Right? They were saying the demand was for so many rooms,
Yeah,
and
right.
you know, and I did the math. So like literally, they need, if you look at a 5-bedroom per house, they need 125. So the demand is there, right? People are wanting this, and with affordability, I mean, I know there's a lot of issues that's gonna have to be worked out, and I would like for Mo and Kathy, because y'all been doing it for 3 years. What are your experience been like with this?
So we've done some
Here,
around
Mike.
Which direction?
Mm.
So we've done some of our own marketing, but primarily PadSplit does it. One thing I don't know, they don't market it a whole lot to the hosts, but they market it to the members. If a member refers someone who joins PadSplit, they get $50. So
Off of PadSplit.
yeah, from PadSplit.
PadSplit, yeah.
Yep. So, it wouldn't be a bad idea to have a flyer. If you have an empty room or something, just a flyer that says, hey, PadSplit will pay you for a referral.
That's
Who books
true.
the room.
That's-
Yeah. So, I
yeah.
mean, that's something easy you can do.
Yep.
And what other experience are you looking for?
Any horror stories?
There's always horror stories. There is. We've had our share of less than completely sane members that join. They don't last very long. The other members kind of.
But overall,
It's like anything. One bad apple that's what you pay attention to. So out of, I think it's like 90 rooms, 5 or 6 people over the 3.5 years we've been doing this. So that's not terrible. Yeah. And by the way, we have members that have been with us since the very first week we opened.
Yeah.
almost 3 years.
Yeah, over 3.
Over 3.
Over
Yeah,
3.
yeah. The one thing that again, I'm one of the ones that I'm trying to be proactive, right? So one of the things that we're dealing with is some of the zoning things that are there. But when you're dealing with a protected class, I think you're getting a different stance. So if I create a senior home where I'm going to put 5 seniors in it, right? Then the seniors are a protected class. And based on that, that would be a different, that goes against some of the counties and their requirements over a certain amount of beds, right? Now, if it was run as an assisted living facility, the code in Virginia says 12, right? Up to 12 in a house is available, and they have to have 150 square feet per person, and you have to have a caregiver, come in 3 times a week or something, otherwise. And then if you have a veteran home, right? I wouldn't want to have a veteran living with a former or a civilian, right? Most veterans want to hang around with other veterans. So when I'm doing a veteran home, it's all together. So that by itself is a protected class. So now I can do an entire home that way, and I'm not dealing with the zoning issue that may occur otherwise. But I can still run it, and that's what we're working on, is running it through the PadSplit platform, right? So for the screening. See, this is where the government has speaking out of both sides of their mouth, right? The federal government saying, we're now going to give you vouchers to do rooms. So almost like Section 8 vouchers, HUD's now issuing an amount for room rentals, right? So, and then the states have not, and the localities have not caught up with all that. But if it's coming from the federal side, the counties and the states are feeling, oh, we can't go against the federal side because then we're going to lose funding in other sources if we don't go down that. So that's the loophole gap area where I think PadSplit's trying to squeeze in and figure out the affordable housing mix and solve those problems and bring up those issues to allow for that to occur where it's not looked at as a multifamily home or a rooming house in that capacity.
The demand speaks for itself. So
Exactly.
When they told me that number, it just stuck out to me like this. So there's actually people wanting it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that fact that they're handling that like, Felicia, it's simply the fact that it's hands off, right, for us, and we can focus on what we do best, which is the real estate acquisition, maintenance, and management, and all that other stuff, and solve the problems. I've learned so much, and thank you for all of it, what you've said. I mean, honestly, because we came in with a larger volume, so we didn't have the time to do the little things that you did or that you're doing that I feel like are providing a much better value in some cases, and I think will return a bigger return, I think, for in a lot of our houses. So I do see a lot of that, but at the same time, my biggest fear is, man, we've got 105 doors, and all that stuff. How can I deal with that many conversations and activities, and it's not. It's not possible for us to do it to the scale that you're doing, personalizing. But there's some things that I can do that I know for sure that would make the experience a lot greater and better.
But it's working though. You have 14 doors, and your style is working also.
Yeah. We've got 10 and we manage 4, so for other investors, and that's can't complain. I mean, it's a phenomenal model.
And I don't want to manage to that level the whole time too. I think it's because I'm relatively new to PadSplit too, so I think my main goal is to just kind of get more direct access to what actually is working and what's not, right? Yeah, and ultimately, it's almost like, if I hire a property manager, right, they will ask me, like, what do you want me to do? So I kind of have to spell it out for them, like, what has worked and what hasn't worked. And to be honest, that was like one of my pain points with the one in Texas, because we had to hire a property manager from the beginning because we are not there. And the whole time we were just like, what should we invest on next? Like, we have no clue. Like, we were trying everything. And, to be honest, like, I think my property in Richmond was doing so much better. And I was actually surprised. So, like, I kind of used that as my test subject. And then I kind of just kind of mold that into, like, what we think, is the right balance. Because I think you're right. Because it is a lot, but at the same time, I think once we get to a certain level, I would love to hire somebody who had that level of, like, heart and service, and then, ultimately kind of, like, run from there, Yeah.
Both work. Your style is working for you, and more you can.
Yeah.
No, I ultimately want to
It's
do,
more scalable.
yeah.
Imagine you trying to, 90 doors. I mean,
Well, yeah.
Probably nowhere near as well as hers.
Right.
I mean, we're sitting, I think, at between 76 and 81, something there. Yeah, but she's probably sitting at about 90 to 100% close to that.
Well, but the thing is, like, I think, like, if I have, like, that level of, like, tenure, right? You guys have, like, more, like, in the field, like, what has worked and what hasn't worked. And plus, like, also my background is, like, hospitality. So, like, I think I was just trying to make sure, like, whoever I train next, like, I know where I need to focus my attention on, because, in the past, like, we didn't know, and we were relying on PadSplit to tell us what to do. So that didn't work, because they're basically a software company. Like, I don't know what to do with your tenants. I don't know, figure it out. So, yeah. Okay.
So you mentioned before that you were doing an eviction.
Oh, that was not PadSplit. That was
Because I
not
was
PadSplit.
curious how you're going to evict somebody that you didn't sign a lease with. Because PadSplit, the leases were with PadSplit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you get them out of there if there's a problem? Does PadSplit evict them? Because I was told you had to do it as the owner.
So yeah.
We've done it.
Please share the name. Yeah.
So the most recent one we had was a gentleman who was in the room. He was paying every week, doing everything fine. He lost his job, didn't communicate he lost his job, didn't ask for an extension, didn't ask for anything, just stopped paying. And then when he was terminated, he was like, "Oh, well, you can't terminate me." Blah 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 blah. Stayed for 5 months, and we went through the eviction process
my
and everything. And Curtis Gordon's office helped us
Okay.
with the eviction,
Okay.
and they've helped another PadSplit owner with a similar situation. But you have to go through the eviction process, even though their lease is not with you, it's with PadSplit. You're the homeowner, so you're representing PadSplit and you're interested in the property.
That's the way it's
But
written.
how do you get them out of there if you didn't sign the lease?
They signed a lease with
they signed a lease
PadSplit.
with
They signed the lease
PadSplit.
with PadSplit,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
lists in there that because you're the homeowner,
Yeah.
you would represent them on behalf of PadSplit in court for the property.
Yeah.
Right.
But the short answer is hire an attorney.
Yeah. But there's,
Yeah.
I mean, we've had three,
Really two.
two, yeah. Two evictions, for say, through the courts. And one took 5 months, as she said, and the other one took,
Well, because he
I think-
tried to sue us. That was why it took so long.
right. And then the other one was the one that in Roanoke. What was that length of time, you think? 3 months?
Yeah, that was a couple months.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a dispute between two members, and
We actually
one
did
of them
have
was
three,
laid
because
out.
then we had one for 1 month. We had one as
Yeah.
30 days,
Okay.
one for 3 months, and
The
one
other
for
was-
about 5
the others
months.
were early on.
So we did have three.
Oh wow. Okay.
Did y'all use Donkos for?
Yeah.
So they know about it.
And the funny thing is that all of them were two were in the city. One was in Colonial Heights, but the
One was in
one,
Petersburg.
and one, yeah, so the city, the judge, the second time around, recognized that it was a PadSplit type of situation, and the judge was very, I guess, more amenable, I would say, towards.
She was more fair. So
Yeah.
the tenant was in there, and
She's had some time
he
to
was just,
research.
like, talking real bad about us and everything, and she was very professional with him and very patient with him, but basically said, "You're full of it."
Yeah.
So,
And so
yeah.
it's starting, the traction's
Yeah.
starting to happen, and there's more awareness.
Yeah.
So it's,
So do you actually have to escort them out and everything, like with the sheriff?
well,
or?
I think they, They had a certain amount of days to be out,
Yeah.
and then they left the rest of the.
Oh, so they
belongings
already
that was-
left on their
They had
own.
already
Oh,
gotten their
okay,
stuff
okay.
out, and everybody left peacefully. I mean,
Oh,
it
okay,
wasn't-
okay.
It wasn't a forced out type of a situation.
Which kind of goes back to the point, if you do have PadSplit, make sure you have like an electronic door lock so you can make sure they can't go back to their own house or whatever
You
house.
can do that for every single room.
Yeah, oh yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Like the hotel.
What was that? I'm sorry, what?
$100 per door, $150 per door, sledge.
Yep.
Yeah,
It's on the phone.
yeah.
Yeah.
Not just the front door.
No, in each room, yes. Mm-hmm.
So I want to respect everybody's time. It's almost 4 o'clock.
Holy moly.
And you guys are more than welcome to stay if you guys want to network. More than happy. So I'll just kind of wrap up here. So that way, you guys can go where you guys need to go to, but you're more than welcome to stay.
I got nowhere to go.
I want to give a big round of applause for
All right, thank you guys, thank you. Now I can eat.
and thank her for the.
Oh, no, no, no.
Yeah, she's wonderful.
This is my friend's loose, like, empanada.